but in the interest of time, we can start this very first parallel session of the 4 days conference. Thank you very much for joining us yesterday on the inaugural as well as on various other sessions. And one thing that keep on emerging, that was navigating Pakistan's discourse specifically, and then South Asia's discourse in general in this disorderly world. And when we talk of disorderly world, what does it mean for development sector for Pakistan? What does it mean for economic growth? What does it mean for social sector issues? What does it mean for foreign policy? What does it mean for some of the issues that needs to be discussed more candidly among and between countries? In the plenary and also last night in dinner, you might have heard of Bangladesh minister. She was talking of revival of SARC in some way, saying that those countries who believe in regional cooperation, they can start, and those who require time, perhaps they can take their time and they can join when and if and whenever they would like to, but that shouldn't stop other countries to think of some of the mechanism to take this whole idea further. Now, while it's easy said than done, we have in this room a galaxy of eminent experts who are from this region, as well as those who have served in this region at some point of their career, are still working on this region. And how do they look at this whole process as a spectator? And how do they perceive the challenges as well as opportunities? Likewise, the Pakistani and South Asian experts here, and we have guests from other South Asian countries as well. So one would like to listen from them, their point of view, and what do they suggest. But first, let me formally thank Imran Shaukat for bringing all these experts along. I know you're very busy in your own right and own spaces, but it's a huge confidence in Pakistan, your visit at this particular juncture. I think that is a vote of confidence for Pakistan, that all of you decided to join us and to be part of this 28th edition of Sustainable Development Conference. Imran.
Thank you, Abid, and I thank SDPI and all the logistics people, Sadia, for putting together this great show. I do appreciate everyone who has come. I will really benefit from your idea. Our idea, briefly put, is to look at Pakistan and South Asia. Pakistan sits in a different place in the eyes of the world in the last couple of years. And more importantly, within the region, what has happened between in Bangladesh, in Nepal, the revolutions that have taken place, there's an opportunity. I think we can all kind of agree that SARC is on life support. Some people don't want to call it dead. Maybe it's almost dead. Maybe it can be resuscitated, who knows? But that does not mean that the region of the world with 25% of the population of the world and the one that is the least integrated cannot at least start towards some sort of sub-regional integration. And what do I mean by that? We have 250 million people in Pakistan, 175 million people in Bangladesh, and for the first time since 71, we are in talking terms, we can move forward. So the whole idea is to look at sub-regional integration between countries specifically, with the hope that in a few years, maybe India will come to the table and say, hey, if everybody else is integrating, we want to be a part of this also. And the other one, of course, the big topic is development funding has gone down. development funding is almost coming to an end. That is more the government to government. But that does not mean, and my personal opinion, I've been a development player. I've worn the hat of a development practitioner. I've served in Bangladesh, I've served in Africa, and I came to Pakistan on behest of USAID as a project leader. So I come from a background of development player and I go, $80 million of USAID funding, if it gets cut down, so what? Pakistan is a huge economy, it's a huge country. And we can't rely on the 80 million or 100 billion. It is a great help. I'm not saying, a lot of time it shows the support and that the country is offering you. The symbolism actually sometimes more important than the amount of money coming in. But we need to stand on our own. Pakistan, Bangladesh, these countries are too large for anybody else to come in and fix their systems, whether it's health system, education, infant mortality, polio. We can't rely on the world to fix it. We have to fix it. World can only support or give us pilots and models. So those are the two big things we wanted to look at. And with that, actually, I'm going to do a little bit different. I would actually ask each one of the delegates to introduce themselves and actually their background, so everybody else who has comments and questions can actually get a sense of what this team is. The one common theme I can say is just about all of them have served in Pakistan. Some of them have also served regionally. Some of them, like Maureen over there, has been responsible for the world. So she sitting as a very senior #2 as USAID, she's looked at the whole world and the kind of contracts and development funding that needs to go there. And of course, many of the other names, so I don't want to introduce them. I'll turn it over and let them introduce themselves and what they think of this initiative and what we're trying, because we're just feeling through it right now. So with that, I'll turn it over to Elizabeth.
Am I audible? All right. Thank you so much, Imran, Abid, to SVPI. It is a pleasure to be here, to be back in Pakistan. My name is Elizabeth Threlkeld, and I'm really, really pleased to have this opportunity to be here today, to be a part of this delegation. So big thanks for that. I am a former U.S. Foreign Service officer. I had the privilege of serving in Pakistan from 2014 to 2016. I lived here in Islamabad, and I also spent quite a bit of time out in Peshawar and made it down to Karachi briefly. So was able to really benefit from that experience. And in fact, I so enjoyed learning about Pakistan that I ended up leaving the State Department after my tour here. And I am now the director of the South Asia program at the Stimson Center in Washington, D.C. I've been at Stimson for the past 7 years. And at Stimson, we are the largest and longest standing think tank program focused on South Asia in the U.S. And our predominant focus is building up, supporting, and engaging next generation talent here in Pakistan and indeed across the broader region. We've talked a lot about Gen Z and what it represents, and I think there really is something to that. But through a variety of different platforms and also support for quiet dialogues within the region, we do try in some small way to provide a platform to facilitate that sort of connectivity. There is so much potential here in Pakistan and the broader region, and it's really a privilege to be in a space where we're allowing ourselves to ask some new questions about that. So I'll leave it there. Look forward to the discussion.
Okay. Good morning, Tariq Chima. I'm a physician by training, but have been in the development sector for the last 20 plus years. I switched my career from orthopedic surgery to philanthropy, taking the humanitarian route, but for the last 2 decades, I've been working in development sector and development finance, working with multilateral institutions and governments. And being a proud Pakistani American, of course, my heart is always in the region and see how we can, contribute to the country, which I believe not only Pakistan, but many countries in our region, I think they are really have not really got to the potential they carry for their development of for their own citizens and bringing the peace and prosperity in the region through building robust regional linkages. So the current situation, I think, handed us a great opportunity where we look into how to best leverage our resources, technical, human, natural. And I always say Pakistan is not a resource-poor country, but it's perhaps not well-managed country. So we need to really exploit our own resources, build partnerships, build peace in the region. And I think whatever I can do, definitely bringing my area of knowledge and network is to basically enhance the quality of life, improve the human development indicators, because it's not just the economic development. You have to have the human development goes hand in hand, and that is also very crucial for the peace, and disparities to me can be amount to the security risk as well. Thank you.
If I may just jump in, what Tarek did not say, and his real role that he didn't mention, he is the kind of person, he's the founder of the World Donor Forum, in which Qatar Foundation, all these institutes are there. He's also the founder of the Muslim Philanthropist Institution. And he co-hosted the UNGA session on immigrants or migration and refugees with the head of UNHCR. So that's actually perhaps even more relevant than his well wishes that he just put out there.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much. I'm Skip Waskin, and I want to say it's a great honor and a pleasure to be here, to be back in Pakistan. Thank you so much, Dr. Suleri, for having us at this event, and to Imran for organizing our delegation's participation. I served in Pakistan from 2012 to 2018 as part of the U.S. Embassy. I was with the consulate in Karachi for the first 3 of those years, where I headed USAID's provincial office for Sindh and Baluchistan. And then I was asked to move to Islamabad to become the coordinator of economic and development assistance for all agencies that were providing civilian assistance. So I spent 6 of the best years of my career here in this country, and it's a great pleasure to be back. As you will surmise, given my background, I'm here to focus on the issue of what we used to call or development assistance. And as we'll discuss when we look toward the future, I believe that paradigm is changing from a paradigm where it's no longer assistance, but really development cooperation, which will have several aspects to it that we'll discuss. And one of them, of course, as Mr. Chima has mentioned, and as Imran has stressed, is mobilization of the host country, in this case, Pakistan's own resources for the furtherance of development, and the ownership by Pakistan of these development programs. That, I think, is absolutely essential. But I also don't want to lose sight as we look toward the future, which of course we should, but we need, I think, to draw lessons from the past. I was here at a time when sort of a golden era of the assistance relationship, or the U.S. aid presence in Pakistan, that was the Kerry Lugar-Berman era. And just to recapitulate, Kerry Lugar-Berman appropriation was enacted, or authorization rather, was enacted in 2009. It authorized the provision of up to $7.5 billion of assistance for Pakistan over a 5-year period. What happened? I wouldn't say Kerry Lugar-Berman was a failure, but it certainly didn't achieve its full potential. Only $4.5 billion of that assistance was actually obligated. And ultimately, not all of that was spent. In fact, in 2019, shortly after I left, USAID had to return $600 million of that money to the U.S. Treasury because Pakistan and the United States couldn't figure out how to spend it. And I think that's a real tragedy. When I was listening to Minister Malik yesterday speak very movingly about how profound an experience it was for him to talk to a little girl who was a victim of the flooding in 2022 and realize she couldn't even get a glass of clean water. And I think under that circumstance, we gave away $600 million. We can't have that. And I think as whatever the shape the future takes, let's be much more committed to actually spending the resources that are made available. I'll stop there and turn it over to my colleague, Maureen.
Thank you, Skip. Good morning, everyone. I'm Maureen Shawkett, and I want to thank Imran and Dr. Abid for hosting this panel, and I'm very, very pleased to be back in Islamabad. I am a retired USAID Foreign Service officer. I actually started my career here in Pakistan, and I was reflecting last evening that when I left Pakistan for the first time, it was in 1994 because USAID was closing the mission. I was very happy to come back when USAID reopened the mission. I was one of the first people on the ground. I actually did the first education award. I was a contracting officer by background, and I was very, very pleased to be back. And I'm reflecting that now here I am again when the fate of development in the world is very precarious. And I think we all recognize the importance of what happens when there is a gap in development. I absolutely agree with Skip that we're moving from development assistance to development cooperation, and that's critically important. In my career at USAID, in addition to serving in Pakistan, I also served for 5 years in Bangladesh. So I've got a lot of experience in the region. I also was with the USAID mission in Nepal for 5 years. Various positions I've served. As Imran mentioned, I was the head of procurement for all of USAID, and I was the head of policy during the last Trump administration, where we were really focused on the journey to self-reliance, which meant country ownership. And now what we find is that the administration has taken that to a completely different level, where they're really counting on countries to be having their own systems and their own development programs. And to avoid some of the problems that Skip just mentioned, I think there's really going to have to be a lot of focus on public financial management, transparency, especially in the procurement systems, and also just making sure that there's a lot of coordination. Pakistan has to be in the lead on its own development issues. There's not going to be another development entity that will come in and solve the problems. All the problems originated here, they need to be solved here. And I think that it's an exciting time to, I think there is a role for US organizations to be coming in with some of the lessons learned and bringing some of the innovations and figuring out how we can work together to apply those to Pakistan. Currently, since I retired, I'm working for an organization called URC. We're very focused on global health, as well as economic growth and trade, migration, and monitoring, evaluation, and learning. And I think that there's a lot of role for a lot of expertise in the development arena to help Pakistan as it's working through these issues. How do you design your own development programs? How do you ensure transparency of the systems? How do you hold yourselves accountable for the results that the people of the country deserve? So I'm really looking forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Thanks. Good morning, everyone. My name is John Danilowitz. I'm also a retired State Department Foreign Service officer. I retired in 2021 after over 3 decades in the State Department. I was fortunate to serve 3 times here in Pakistan, twice managing U.S. law enforcement assistance programs, and once as Consul General in Peshawar. Since I retired, I'm working with a small human rights organization based in Washington that focuses on the region. But I think the reason I'm here primarily is because of my experience in Bangladesh. I also had the opportunity to serve 3 times in Dhaka over the course of my career. And I've been closely watching the historic events in Bangladesh over the last 2 years, which I think, as Imran mentioned, have implications for the region and some opportunities for regional cooperation. Again, as Elizabeth mentioned, the role of Gen Z was critical in Bangladesh. In my view, it will be critical in the region moving forward. And we've seen it play out in other countries as well. In my work in Bangladesh over the last 18 months or so, I've also been struck by the pernicious effects of the misinformation, the disinformation, just the general ignorance among and between the populations in this region. So I think part of what we're trying to achieve is trying to help break down some of those barriers and increase mutual understanding. The other experience that I've had, again, Tariq referred to this, and I think he's a great living example of this, is the catalytic role that the diaspora communities can play in the United States. We certainly saw this with the Bangladeshi American diaspora organizing over the last 18 months to support the changes underway. My sense is that when we look at regional cooperation, that cooperation can also extend to the various diaspora communities in the United States. And again, we're fortunate to have such a diverse team. And I think we can serve multiple objectives, including helping to raise awareness about the changes and the opportunities here in Pakistan and the region in Washington. But the ownership for this and the center of gravity for this initiative lies here in the region, not in the US. So thank you, Imran and Dr. Saleri, for inviting me to join the team.
Thank you. My name is Tariq Suleiman. I'm a senior research fellow at Bloomsbury, Pakistan, based in UK. It's a professors collective which facilitates most of the critical research which takes place at PhD level. And being part of this group is, since that group is assembled at around the idea of a lack of our dysfunctional regional order, where Pakistan has a space right now to, one way or the other, design its own role in such a way that creatively it provides a space for other countries as well to be more collaborative, cooperative, instead of based on rivalries. And being an academic in this group of practitioners, I think I can bring a different perspective which requires diverse opinions and diverse solutions and diverse perspectives. And I probably can look at the same issues which have been being debated in terms of rising rivalry between China and America in a different perspective, and the rising challenges of climate and geopolitics and geoeconomics in perspectives which I have not seen at least being debated in practitioners' tables. Thank you.
Thanks, Tariq. My name is Anthony Renzulli. Like many of my colleagues, I am also a retired U.S. Foreign Service Officer, State Department Foreign Service Officer. And thank you very much, Dr. Suleri and SDPI, for hosting us today. Over my 20-plus year career in the Foreign Service, I had the opportunity to serve several times across South Asia, including in Pakistan, as well as in Sri Lanka and in India, and several jobs in Washington working on South Asian affairs. Most recently, prior to my retirement from the Foreign Service, as the Director for India at the National Security Council in Washington. Currently, I serve as an associate partner for South Asia at Albright Stonebridge Group in Washington, D.C., which is a strategic advisory and commercial diplomacy firm, helping mostly commercial clients manage the regulatory and geopolitical challenges they may face in this region, not least of all in Pakistan, which remains a challenging business environment. When I was at the State Department working on Pakistan, I was in the economic team and trying to grow trade and investment relationship between the United States and India, which, notwithstanding the fact that the U.S. is Pakistan's largest import market, remains rather flat. So one of my perspectives in this diverse group is to not lose sight of the importance of economic growth, to the broader opportunity that is in front of Pakistan now in a changing geopolitical order, in a development environment which is under severe stress, but nevertheless does present an opportunity for more local ownership, more scalability perhaps across the region, which is something that's of great interest to our group. But the importance again of economic growth and reform at this moment in time. So I'm really happy, like my colleagues, to be part of this visit, to be back in Pakistan for the first time outside of the United States embassy cordon. It's really quite a great pleasure to be back in Islamabad and to be here with all of you, and looking forward to the discussion.
Can we move to the other delegates from United States? The reason we are having this introduction so that our guests from South Asia and Pakistan, they can know the background of the visitors from United States, and they can have interaction.
Number of times. Maybe that's why on the other side of the table from the other American delegates. But I'm a longtime analyst and observer of Pakistan and South Asia more broadly. I was at the Wilson Center think tank in DC for nearly 20 years, leading the South Asia, including the Pakistan portfolio since 2007, and I've traveled to Pakistan, worked regularly on Pakistan since 2009, which was when I made my first trip here. The work that I oversaw at the Wilson Center on Pakistan emphasized on looking at Pakistan with a broad lens that went beyond the security lens that was quite typical in Washington for many of those years. So for a number of years, I oversaw projects that included an annual conference and publication on some type of development challenge in Pakistan. So that included a lot of work on education, on trade, on water shortages, agricultural issues, and we also oversaw a very interesting study group looking at reviewing U.S. civilian assistance in Pakistan. This was right after the Kerry Lugar-Berman Act, several years after that. So the Wilson Center, as many of you know, was dismantled by the Trump administration not too long ago. Unfortunately, there are not many think tanks in Washington that focus extensively on Pakistan. The Wilson Center, as well as USIP, were two of the few, and they were dismantled. Fortunately, this makes the work that Elizabeth and the Stimson Center do on Pakistan and South Asia all the more important. One of the final projects that I oversaw before we folded was a look at multilateralism in South Asia. It was a very interesting project, and one of the takeaways has a lot of relevance for the work that our group plans to do in the coming weeks, and that was that for many countries in the region, beyond India, SARC is still seen as an important thing. There's a view among many, at least those that we engage with in countries, particularly the smaller countries of South Asia, that SARC is one of the only platforms where everyone, all of the 8 countries in the region, are on an equal footing with India, which is important. So I think it's important to keep in mind, even as we all acknowledge that SARC, the term I use is that it's dead in the water. It still is something that many countries in the region see as something worth salvaging. And of course, Bangladesh has very actively taken a role in trying to push for it to be revitalized. So I believe I'm a part of this group because of the longstanding focus that I've had on Pakistan and the region. I'm privileged to be a part of that. And I would also say that based on my many years of experience focusing on Pakistan, it seems like there's been so many discussions, so many conversations, promising conversations that focus on development challenges in Pakistan. And the same really good recommendations are put out there, but you just feel that not enough changes. You're not seeing the results on policy levels that you want to see. And so, this group intends to look at things a bit differently. This has already been noted. It's going to focus on looking at how Pakistan can work with its neighbors on a sub-regional level to focus on pursuing shared interest, revolving around shared significant challenges, whether you're talking about water challenges, water issues, or climate change, or whatever the case might be. So again, I'm privileged to be a part of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, these are the 8 quote-unquote Pakistani experts which are here as part of U.S. delegation to SDC. I know on this side of table there are expertise as well. And as you take the discussion further, perhaps you can introduce yourself and you can ask your question, or you can give your comment or any general comment on both sides. So the format that Imran and I were thinking, we have around 50 minutes for the discussion. So instead of going to any formal presentations, any deliberations, we will request our experts from Pakistan and those who are interested in not only Pak-US relation, but also in South Asia and broader US relation. How does this US-China relation, they will impact South Asia? What does it mean when we talk of this shrinking development assistance, etc., geopolitical changes? So the canvas is quite broad. We are just trying to note down the questions and answers and try to come up with a synthesis paper that will be sharing with all of you, and so that you can give your input on it, and we will take it further. So the way we conceptualized it, that perhaps in 2025 we can think of how Pakistan and South Asia, how to go about it in the regional cooperation with the context of Pakistan. But from January 2026, we'll definitely be trying to expand to other countries of South Asia in it, and try to see that how other countries, they can play their part in it. So the floor is open. We can have, who would like to be first? Introduce yourself briefly and then.
Can you hear me? Yeah. So I'm retired Brigadier Feroz Hassan Khan, and although I'm not part of the US delegation, but I've come from there. Accidentally, I was here on the leave, and thank you for the US government shutdown. I'm also on furlough. So, so that gives me a chance. Thank you for inviting me, in the context of today's discussion, I just wanted to, my introduction, in the sense that I was one of the founding members of Pakistan's Strategic Plans Division before I retired and moved to the United States. But the relevance of this was that at the time, immediately after the nuclear test of India and Pakistan, there were two main streams of thought that appeared, both, and it was Washington-led, and I was part of that initiative. In my active duty role at that time, and then post-retirement time, those two streams of thought were that one was that India, Pakistan, and South Asian construct is so complex with crisis and history. There were two nuclear armed powers, that they will be going from crisis to crisis, and there'll be no sustainable strategic structural arrangement that could be foreseeable future, and that was 25 years ago. But then there was a second scheme of thought, which was that the most logical thing for India and Pakistan now would be to have only one course of going into a cooperative security framework, so that the nuclear weapons would provide them the space of absence of total war and allow the countries to build the other elements of national power, particularly the regional integration of what we are talking today. I happen to be from that second school of thought, both in my active duty role at the time, and one of the manifestations of that was the Lahore Memorandum of Understanding of 1999. I was part of that. And then from there, from a military and strategic and foreign office perspective, we came up with the idea which was called the strategic restraint regime between India and Pakistan. That is the only way that you could have stopped and gone through a process that would have provided you the space to do so. And I belong to that genre, but life just took me after 9/11 and many of the crises in region, and I became part of the Naval Postgraduate School in 2003, and this is history. So that's why I'm here. And I'm always a regular speaker at the SDPI on similar conferences. So it was in that context that I came here. Unfortunately, the hope that South Asia will go through the pathway of more cooperative security framework did not happen. You already are aware of which pathway. So that school of thought, the pessimistic one, was the one who actually succeeded now. We sit at the cusp of today where SARC is nearly, whatever you may call it, is irrelevant. And the idea that regional cooperation is more feasible, and that's the only feasible area left more. But traveling all the way and given the thinking about over the plane, my idea is that Pakistan has situated itself not just to be a sort of a secondary sub-region, but actually Pakistan has branched out itself from South Asia into Southwest Asia and getting more involved into other affairs. And I wanted to flag this point up. I don't want to take too much time that we have been discussing, Elizabeth and I and others over plane, that whenever geopolitical circumstances are favorable to Pakistan, Pakistan crashes that as it should. But the moment the circumstances change, that advantage that you got start crumbling, which means that whatever advantage you took in that period of favored environment, you did not build enough strategic structures in the country to sustain itself. And that was only that either individuals or organizations got temporary benefits and it starts crumbling again. The economic graph tells you the cooperation in that very, very clearly. And here is another moment which I believe most of you know, that the circumstances somewhat changed favorable to Pakistan, at least in the Trump administration arrival. And if the Pakistanis don't do that, what this goal of this thing is, it's very important. I only have to say one point because I'm not be saying again. Abid, you could told us about sustainable development goals. Out of the 17 goals that we talk about, I only picked up one because of this global turbulence, My own ideas is that the world is always in disorder. It's never been in order. We all know the students of IR. But there's some particular point in history where the world becomes so adrift and so disorderly that so much of turbulence happens in the world that it starts affecting both region and other states. And if any state can carve a favorable environment in that is an extremely rare phenomenon in international relations. And I think Pakistan has found itself on that sweet spot momentarily, which is where it should be. But unfortunately, because of that turbulence in the world, the region should have united more. In fact, we're seeing that the region is disintegrating even more, which is why the branching off is going on. But the most important casualty out of the 17 goals for which my humble request was the goal number 16, which is peace, justice, and strong institutions. Unfortunately, the legacy institutions that we all are familiar for the last 100 years, particularly the 20th century, are now eroding in big way. Trade institutions, security institutions, within countries and within regions, etc. We are seeing it in Middle East, we are seeing it within India, we are seeing it within Pakistan, we are seeing it in Europe and other places. That is the most important goal, which in my opinion is the threatened one under the circumstances. And I think that should be the one should be focused. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Feroz. Can I go to some South Asian participants? We have participants from Nepal, we have participants from Sri Lanka. Would you like to chip in at this particular point from Bangladesh? Yes, Vishnu.
I am Vishnu Raju Preti. I am mainly researcher on peace, security, and also university professor in one of the universities. So my concern or my issues to share here is that many of you were somehow dreaming about the alternative SARC. But reality is, at least for me, is not that easy. So perhaps better would be to go to the thematic way rather than to the geographical way of bringing countries together. Maybe climate issue, climate insecurity is one of the pertinent, neither India nor Pakistan nor any country can deny on that. So whether creating institution or whether creating network or collaboration or any type of the cooperation could be in the thematic area is rather easy than the reviving SARC or looking for the alternative to SARC, etc., until and unless the very high decision maker of Pakistan and India are really willing to do that. Last time I was in the University of Defense of the Pakistan there with the few high-level officials, their determination I heard, and in many of the meetings in Indian high level, I really see dim hope for the reviving of the SARC as it is, but there may be alternatives. That is how I see. Thank you.
Thank you.
It is very interesting to have listened to all these comments, and I come from Sri Lanka, representing Asia Pacific Regional Coordination Mechanism of Civil Society Organizations. By profession, I'm a lawyer and a university lecturer, and attached to a Sri Lankan think tank, Center for Women's Research, CENWA. My interest is, I'm very sorry, but some of these bloated terms. We talk about domestic resource mobilization. We talk about leave no one behind. We talk about whole of government, whole of society, where I will not go into illustrate and to say what Sri Lanka is right now. We are in transition, and we believe in partnership. We believe in collaboration in South Asia, and we believe in SARC. So what I would say from the civil society's perspective, buildings would come up, high-rises would be seen, but the suffering of people is not really seen within the figures which you see from outside. And USAID, many of our development projects were supported by USAID. And when you say domestic resource mobilization, it is also about circular economy. And when we talk about cooperation between different countries in the region, domestic resource mobilization is something very important, but also a bloated term. And it is when you look at the backward and forward integration of domestic resource mobilization, considering the responsibility centers, duty bearers whom we call, and we talk about right holders. And this whole concept of domestic resource mobilization is something to be vague in our terms. So it's important to understand where the partnerships are, where the responsibilities are, and accountability and transparency. Because we are in a country where, in a region actually, where ever-changing politics is changing our dynamics. So domestic resource mobilization, we believe in domestic resource mobilization because it's my country, and that is where I come from. But we are in a totally dependent, and there is a lot of dependency. In that sense, cooperation is very important. And that is why South Asia is very important for us, and SARC is important.
Arun, I wanted to come to you, and Maureen's remarks, I got struck with them. That the problems of the region, problem of Pakistan should be dealt and can only be resolved by us. You have been part of a very senior policy making as cabinet minister and have tried in more than one roles addressing these problems from within. Would you like to pitch in at this point? You can also briefly introduce yourself for the benefit of other participants.
Well, thank you very much, first of all, to SDPI and Dr. Abid Suleri for having me there for this power breakfast, I would call. So I'm Harun Sharif. I have worked for years on economic development as a development economist. Have worn several hats, as some of you know. So I remained for 7 years as the lead and senior regional advisor to the World Bank for regional economic cooperation of South and Central Asia. As Abid has said, for my sins, remained in the cabinet for almost 2 years as Minister for Investment. Previously I have actually had the honor of advising 3 UK Prime Ministers on South Asian affairs. from a development lens on something called DFID, which has changed its name fashionably. Now, these days, I'm basically advising regional countries on the same issues, particularly China, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Turkey. My old hat Western colleagues keep on, connecting with me with the similar issues because these are common. So my very quick, in the interest of time, 3 levels of comments. I think we need to, first of all, get out of the old school thinking of South Asia and redefine basically what has changed. So what has 3, 4 things which have changed? Number one, while the political geography of South Asia remains the same, as set by the British, the economic geography has changed. And let's respect that. Wherever regional cooperation has been successful, be it ASEAN or EU or others, there is a one lead country with positive influence which have played a role. We really don't have a lead player to convene that. Let's face it. And that is the failure of SAARC. God knows hundreds of track twos and meetings. That comes again and again because you need a lead which can convene others to some direction, steer it. West can't do it, US can't do it, unless and until there is an understanding, not a very friendly neighborhood, but a responsible neighborhood, So I won't go into details. I have seen the most favored nation status and others in depth sitting in power circles. So one can leave that. So one is that change. Second change is that the development projects, as well as, getting economic space for geopolitical partnerships is not sustainable. And we have seen it time and again that people have tried it. You get benefits of inflows, and that's never sustained. Third change is very clearly that the rule-based or the multilateralism is in serious danger. And not only danger in terms of development money, in terms of trust, actually, in terms of delivery. People don't believe in that anymore. So that's the macro level environment where we live, a different economic geography, old school political geography, changing players in this region. Now coming to very specifically to Pakistan and South Asia and the US, which one is discussing here. In my opinion, we have in the global scene of power politics, we see that relevance of people becoming lower and lower in the power play. You talk about human development and people, but people don't matter really. The decisions are not taken on the will of the people, with the exception of a breath of fresh air from New York this morning. So people have spoken, but I'm trying to say that that's where disruptions happen. This is a region where you have a very young population. All of you have been involved in dialogues with me and without me. The average age of our track twos or policy dialogues is, if not 70 plus, at least 60 plus. We need to hear the people who matter, who own this region. So disconnect is very clear. My second thing is that I think the time of aid is almost gone. Some of are fighting to have it back, but once an institution is broken, it takes decades to rebuild it. So let's take it. Now, time of partnership is on, but partnership between states is one thing, and partnership between countries are a separate thing. I would make a very strong case for understanding and reaching out to private sector, understanding the regional dynamics, where certain regions like Saudi Arabia and Qatar are sitting on huge level of liquidity. building independent institutions that look at stability from the lens of human development and investment. If we too much dependence on state is a very high risk thing, what I see, because of the volatility of politics. In closing, my remark is, Abid, which is, I think a question to all of us. With this disruption, uncertainty, the fact is that the risk level of South Asia has increased from all angles. From human development angle, from overall development angle, somehow people have started mixing relief operations with development because of the limited pot. And from economic growth angle, it's a debt-stressed region. Huge debt, not only Pakistan. If you look at the debt to GDP of other countries, now these are the challenges. How can US look at it from a knowledge partnership, from a private sector lens partnership, and also accepting that now new players have emerged and help out institutions which can leverage each other's strength. I think the global order of development is very seriously challenged now in this part of the world, and we need to take cognizance of that. Now, de-risking South Asia would be my theme for this group, using various instruments which are not necessarily state or foreign policy focused.
Dr. Ehsan, and then I'll come to the US delegation. You will have heard from our domestic experts. So I'll come to you, but Dr. Ehsan first.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Just to introduce, I am not an expert. I am just, a listener, just a student. I am Dr. Ehsan Mahmood Khan. My PhD's focus is on human security and human development. And indeed, where geography and human security meets. And I also coined, a theoretical concept as parallel to geopolitics and geoeconomics and geostrategy. I named it geohumanism, where geographic imperatives and the needs for human development and human security meet. Now that's my thesis indeed. One. Two, my book, Human Security in Pakistan, published some 12 years ago, also has some work on human security and human development in South Asia. I also headed some time back, I also headed a think tank, the Institute for Strategic Studies, Research and Analysis, being a military veteran now. Now, just a few words on, the topic South Asia in a changing world order. What is changing and what is not has already been debated. And South Asia, we know the position of South Asia, but no, I would talk in terms of cooperative paradigm. I see that no countries in the world have total cooperation as of today and had never had. No region in the world has total cooperation. Any region in the world. It's always, as you say, Robert Cohen and Joseph Nye put it in perspective of complex interdependence. It's in terms of complex interdependence. You have to have some kind of convergences. You have to have some kind of divergences. When national interest is supreme, you can meet it either this way or that way, but it's neither total cooperation nor total competition or confrontation between two countries. May it be superpower in the world, may it be medium power in the world, may it be smaller nation in the world. So interconnectedness between the countries and within a region seeks an interplay between convergences and divergences. Both have to move on a converging axis, not parallel axis, one. Number two, the states in South Asia can work to cooperate using multiple channels for a workable cooperative paradigm.
using the constants and variables of cooperation. Now, what are constants of cooperation in South Asia? Geography is a constant. We cannot change geography. History is a constant. We cannot change history. We can just fiddle with it. We still cannot change it. Culture is a constant. It continues to evolve, but still it's a constant. And it continues to provide a basis for cooperation. And then again, there is another big constant. That is the strategic end of the countries. Peace and prosperity, the urge for peace and prosperity is a constant. And if we need to go for peace and prosperity, we have to go for a cooperative paradigm. Now, the issue is that there is no cooperation. There are so big issues, conflict over conflict, crisis over crisis after crisis. How to go about? I feel that even if there is 1% chance of 1% chance for cooperation, that must not be lost. We should go for that, and maybe someday that 1% weighs heavier, on the scale of regional order than 99% that is confrontation. And now the variables simply, I am now, concluding it. Diplomacy for cooperation, we have to use information for cooperation, not for confrontation. Diplomacy for cooperation, not for confrontation. Education for cooperation, not for competition. Cultural exchanges for cooperation. Economy for cooperation, not for confrontation and competition. And this is how we can go about and where to start from them in South Asia. Now, since as they say, the SARC is already dead, but I say no. The very idea of SARC remains alive. Yesterday, during yesterday's speech, respectable Dr. Robert Kiyosleri, he mentioned of SARC, reviving SARC. And if SARC does not revive in all 8 countries of South Asia, we can start with the miniature SARC. We can start with cooperation with 2 or 3 countries, and countries after countries would continue to join. And this is how the idea of the urge for peace and prosperity can be met, and the idea of cooperation can be glowed. But nothing other than cooperation would work in the end. Thank you very much.
Ambassador Seema Lahi, you raised your hand, and then I'm coming to the US delegation.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Dr. Soleri. And since we've had a discussion yesterday also, I think everybody here knows me across the table, and I'm a former ambassador. I've also worked in development after retirement. I think that the discussion on whether we should wait for SARC to revive or whether we should forge ahead. And I think it would be important to understand that there are opportunities now, the opportunity that the new Bangladesh government dispensation offers to Pakistan and the Trump-Xi meeting recently. So both these are opportunities, and I'm on the side of forging ahead. Other countries can join if and when, but I think, and we're not saying SARC is dead, but we should continue ahead with what the opportunity presents to us. There was one question that I had of our distinguished delegates and the experience they bring. There was a word that was constantly used called local ownership. How exactly do you define that? And what are the elements of that local ownership? And can you sort of enlighten us a little with your experiences on how you propose that we develop that here in our country? And how will that help in bringing together the countries in the region?
Imran, can you take over from this point? I have to just see off our minister.
Before I go and
We have to go to the US delegation,
yes,
taking some of the responses.
I shall do. I did want to comment on one thing that has been raised by Vishnu, of course, touched upon by Harun Saab, Seema, Dr. Ehsan. Vishnu, just to clarify, yes, absolutely. Your idea of going into thematic integration, rather sub-regional integration, rather than trying to create a SARC. No, that's something that we agreed on a long time ago, that what we need to be looking at is sub-regional integration within countries. As Seema just mentioned, why not Bangladesh, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka? That's not an alternative to SARC. I don't think we need to give up on the SARC, and I don't think we should. But more importantly, looking at more areas which are non-controversial. And I am the Pakistan's SIFC's ambassador on Buddhist heritage promotion. I've been working on that for 10 years. That's an easy area for us to go into, non-controversial. We have Sikh heritage sites, Hindu heritage sites, and pretty much the foundation of Buddhism is sitting right here. And working on that, bringing people, opening each other up, that would be the first step to start doing more and more people-to-people interaction. So I did want to, yes, clarify, I don't think there's any ambition in any of us to even look at political integration of the region. That's way beyond our pay scale. That's up to the governments and people much bigger than us. So having just commented on that, I would like to open up the floor on whoever would like to answer first.
Well, I'll start and then I'll turn it over probably to Skip to answer or to help answer the question of what does country ownership mean? Speaking for the United States only, and I'm not speaking in an official capacity, but to understand the way the development budget is devised, it's given by Congress with a lot of special interest. So there's this amount of money for PEPFAR, there's this amount of money for malaria, maternal child health, et cetera. And then it goes down to the country level that may or may not match with the country priorities because it's all very earmarked and this is the money that we have available for you and this is how it can work. What we really need to be thinking about is turning that for the country to come and say, these are our priorities right now. Some of them will maybe short-term. Dengue right now is a big problem, as you've mentioned. Is that going to be a priority right now? And then because prevention is so important, and if you do that and you do it well now, you don't have problems down the road. So what are your immediate needs and what are your long-term needs? Maternal child health has been a problem in this country for as long as I have known the country. 40, 50 years since its inception, probably. Is that a priority that the country is willing to continue to allow, or does it need to be fixed? What are the priorities? And then to articulate that to the donors and say, this is now our biggest priorities in these various sectors, and we want to work in cooperation with you. Taking the ownership, putting your own money up for it, and then asking others to come in with what are your innovations in those areas and how can you help us? I think that's at least the way I see country ownership. Skip, if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I would add to that, and I agree completely. That's a huge challenge, and I think it's extremely important as we move to this new paradigm of cooperation rather than assistance, that what subjects are we actually working on? What are we trying to accomplish? That needs to be defined by whether it's Pakistan or whatever countries in South Asia we're referring to. It's crucially important that they are the ones that set the development agenda and that we're focusing on programs that meet their needs and their priorities. Secretary Rubio has been very clear from the United States perspective, what do we want out of it? Well, from his perspective, or now that's the official view of the US government, foreign assistance or cooperation programs are going to be intended to make America safer, stronger, and more prosperous. So it's clear what our government wants out of it. Now, how does that overlap with or integrate with your priorities? Very important that I think that you define that. I wanted to also get to this question that you raised of what does domestic resource mobilization mean? I noted in the minister's speech yesterday, he's talked about that issue. He used the term blended finance. And he said something that I had, with all respect, and I thought he made a great speech, but I disagreed because he said blended finance means you're on your own. I disagree. Blended finance doesn't mean you're on your own. It means we're in it together. And that's crucially important. Maureen mentioned that part of for a country defining its own priorities is putting up its own resources to further those priorities. I think that's an essential aspect of the partnership paradigm that we as a group are advocating.
John.
First, I just want to thank everyone. These interventions and suggestions have been enormously helpful. We're in the formative stage of refining this proposal. In some ways, we're thinking of ourselves as a startup, right? So we are in that startup phase. We're looking for how we can have the maximum impact and play a catalytic role. There's certainly some convergence, I think, that's emerging on the issues of, thematic focus and sub-regional cooperation. Again, just to highlight what has been mentioned before, the need to focus on the younger generations that will be the inheritors of this. And I fully subscribe to the idea that too much of the discussion happens between people who are nearing the end of their careers, as opposed to engaging people earlier on who will be able to have that sustained impact over time. So again, not to speak for Imran, but I think coming out of this experience over this week, we'll refine this further and take the initiative forward. But I just wanted to express my appreciation for all the interventions thus far.
Anybody else on this side? This could be a very efficient session. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just jump in and echo what John said. I thought the interventions were terrific, and I've already learned a lot. I mean, just to pick up on a few comments here, I mean, I certainly agree with the framing on de-risking South Asia. I think that's a really important way to sort of, think about it. I mean, looking at the moment now, this is more than simply Pakistan, but we're starting this conversation in Pakistan in part because of the opportunity SDPI has afforded to us to begin a discussion with representatives across the region. But clearly it's an interesting moment in it for Pakistan. It is a geopolitical sweet spot that it finds itself in, but it's found itself in that sweet spot before. And it's really important, I think now, perhaps more than ever, that Pakistan take advantage of this opportunity and emerge from this opportunity when it inevitably ends in a stronger position vis-a-vis its economy and its development. This is going to be vitally important, I think, for Pakistan to play the positive role that it has the potential to play in the region, including West Asia, Central Asia, and other places. I mean, clearly Pakistan's experience as a very large country can be extremely relevant to countries across the South Asia region and beyond. So I think it is important. It is interesting to me that the very countries that are in a period of transition right now also find themselves once again working with the IMF and extended fund facilities for the upteenth time. I don't remember who's got the lead right now, if it's Sri Lanka or Pakistan, but they're all pretty well up there now. And the reform agenda is clear. The things have been laid out. The steps that need to be taken have been identified time and time again. And this is an important time to do that. On the de-risking side, and we dance around the India question, but I had the opportunity to participate in a very good discussion on the India-Pakistan conflict last week in Washington. And one of the takeaways was there's really no other way than going back to square one and starting with the very, very basic building blocks. And those building blocks are visas, trade, pilgrimage perhaps, and just starting to do the things. We've heard it before and we've seen it before. The grand gesture is probably not going to be taking place anytime soon between Delhi and Islamabad. But in a changed environment, one has to conclude that even a country like India, which has to diversify its trade and investment relationships and its technology, and clearly in the face of the challenges it faces in Washington. But I think that's incumbent upon Pakistan and others. It would make literally no sense to not look in your own backyard and see where those opportunities are. So that hopefully can be an agenda that the United States, and we'll have an opportunity to talk to our colleagues at the embassy soon, can take up. But this is certainly bigger than just the United States. So I'm hopeful that circumstances can conspire in such a way that normalization does not have to replace solutions to the vexing problems that have been between those two countries and across the region for a very long time. The keys to normalization can be very basic sometimes, and they can ultimately come down. We see countries that have deep challenges between them that can also still do business. And I think that should be the goal. And maybe I hope we can make a small contribution toward that end.
We'll have Feroz Khan.
Point, and thank you for this point that you made. Essentially, I was raising a point that what Mr. Sharif also raised, that you get the advantage during that short period of global, what we talked about, sweet spots point. But is it that that does not sustain itself the moment that circumstances change because you're relying on those old institutions that you was mentioning that do you need to restructure or create new institutions, or those new legacy institutions are no longer relevant? That was my point here.
Elizabeth, please.
Thanks so much. Just to echo much of what has been said, this has already been very helpful. I'm going to pick up on where Anthony left off. As we think about how to navigate sensitivities across the region, right? This is a difficult geopolitical arena. I think advice well taken to have an inclusive perspective of what qualifies as South Asia, right? It is actually helpful in some ways to leverage key nodes outside of South Asia, like, for example, the Gulf, where there are really strong ties across the region. So bring in partners from the outside to the extent that it can help to defray some of those sensitivities. That's one point. One thing that I worry a bit about as we think about the art of the possible here and what are the constellations of geographies that can help us to get some momentum going. We think about Pakistan, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Sri Lanka. I think the framing of that is going to be really critical because already reading pages of the newspapers, you can see the narrative that's taking hold where those bilateral ties are being developed and being read as in opposition to India's regional influence, right? That this is in some ways Pakistan's moment. Things have shifted in Bangladesh, so there's an opening. That's all well and good, but I think doing that in a way, and as we think about this within this group, how do we frame that connectivity in those engagements as inclusive and not exclusive? In some ways, competitive dynamics in the region can help to facilitate more movement and more trade, right? We can kind of use that to be a race to the top, but getting to a point, as was mentioned earlier, where perhaps something, momentum is built sufficiently that there's something that we could eventually look to bring India in on. If this has been built up in such a way that it's seen as adversarial or exclusive, it's going to be almost impossible to do that. And so how to think about connectivity in a way that truly is inclusive and find those areas that are less sensitive, as has been mentioned, where perhaps we can start to lay the groundwork for something that does look a little bit broader across the region.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I
just wanted to bring that, take it forward, that previous comment on India's relationship. I think that the way Pakistan operates in three different regions concentrically, South Asia, Central Asia, and Middle East, and India-Pakistan rivalry is one way or the other affecting all those regions quite substantially at times. So I think it's, academically speaking, I'm just inviting, participants to imagine or think different ways of dealing with India-Pakistan relations. Thank you. So one way of theoretically, one way we could deal with that is if we could de-link politics from rest of the areas like economics, sports, culture. It's very difficult, but one of the biggest issue in that delinking is how we could delink Kashmir issue from rest of our relationships with India. It's quite emotive at times. That's why it becomes very difficult to deal with. But our national interests, as Harun Sharif Sahab rightly pointed out, that the biggest change has taken place on the economic geography. And that dictates us to look at the same things we've been seeing and practicing in a different light. And that different light could be, one of the things is that the political conflict, whichever areas raise that heat more, we could just put that in a back burner in order to get the other things done, because our economy, substantial amount of our economy is diverted towards dealing with this India-centric issue of Kashmir. So it's just a thought. I thought just,
Please,
note it's not necessarily.
I have a very quick comment. I think time and again we have tried to insulate, certain things with the political realities and geopolitics. And as I said, these things don't sustain. So I don't think that we should get back to that and take the reality and, deal with it. That's my first advice. But I would strongly say that, there are a number of things where shared challenges for not only South Asia, but the whole region are there, economic revival is a challenge. Climate is a shared challenge. There are other challenges. We need to look at transactions, not talk. I would again say, and transactions, no matter small, which can open up space for this kind of dialogue. Now, this conference will happen, then all of us will disappear. But if you have a transaction which is leading to an institutional setup in private space or public-private space, that will give a space where people can talk without the fear of being. I can name very easily, I speak to lots of Pakistani and Indian diaspora, that why don't you guys take the lead and do a dialogue? You have stakes. Indian diaspora is too scared, actually, to raise their voice. Pakistani diaspora does not own this government. Let's be honest. That's the reality. They don't want to be part of it. Now, you need to maybe bring in third countries who are diversifying in the region, who can have stakes in 2-3 countries, right? And they would have a shared, objective to de-risk this region, because they are there, their stakes are there. Bilaterally, I don't see, be it at sub-regional level or other, it's going to happen unless a big player sits on table bilaterally. These are just a few thoughts to close. Sorry, the time is short.
No, thank you very much. I will sum up. Was there anybody else?
Thanks. Just a few quick comments in response to the interventions, which are very helpful. So I agree with what was said about young people. It's critical to have young people. They need a seat at the table at these types of discussions, not just because of they dominate demographically, not just because they represent the president in the future in this region, but also, I mean, if you look at the uprisings around the region recently, I think I don't want to overstate the similarities. All these countries are very different, but one of the similarities is that I think the perception that so many of these young people who were in the streets had is that they didn't really have a place to relay their grievances peacefully. They could not vent. I'm not someone that thinks that Pakistan is about to experience an uprising like what happened in these other countries, but I do think that it's important to ensure that young people's voices are engaged. And if you look at this a bit more broadly, if you look at how youth policy plays out in Pakistan and elsewhere, you have youth ministries, you have ministers of youth. Many times these folks are not young people themselves. They're quite old, and that's just not a good thing. So I think that's one point. Secondly, agree with what was said about India. I mean, we could agree that it's practical for the immediate to midterm for Pakistan to look at engagement with the region on sub-regional levels, but let's not just forget about India in the sense that over the long term, one can't rule out possible pathways. And I think it'll come down to issues of leadership. My sense is that maybe we could look to the possibility of greater opportunities for engagement between Pakistan and India in a post-Modi era, in a post-BJP era. It might be a long time before we get to that point, but clearly it's the leaders that are going to be very that's going to be critical, I think, in determining possibilities for more engagement between the two. And then to two quick points to close, I think it's important to be realistic that Pakistan does not have many friends in South Asia, right? Sri Lanka, yes. Bangladesh, that's new, but the issue with Bangladesh is that Bangladesh has an election in a few months, and it could result in a government that could lead to a new dispensation that may not feel as comfortable engaging with Bangladesh, particularly if there's an inclination to try to patch things up with India. So I just put that out there as a warning. And finally, I think one cannot completely divorce Pakistan's internal challenges, including its internal security challenges, from these regional engagement questions, particularly if you look at the issue of Afghanistan. Pakistan, I know, is hoping to pursue connectivity opportunities with Afghanistan that would better link it to Central Asia. There's already a very promising initiative involving Pakistan, Uzbekistan, and Afghanistan, a transnational railway project. But clearly, something like that can only succeed if tensions between Pakistan and Afghanistan are reduced, if security improves, if border tensions are not as much of an issue. So I just put that out there that we can't simply overlook these persistent internal security challenges that Pakistan faces as we look to these conversations we'll have in the coming weeks and months.
Well, thank you, everyone. I think we started a little bit late, so we are going to end a few minutes late. That's okay. I did want to just put it out there that this is just the beginning of a conversation. This is not going to be just Americans and Pakistanis. Now we will start looking for partners in Bangladesh. We actually already have been approached. We will be looking for partners in other countries. Ambassador Seema and other Sri Lankan friends and people who have served there can certainly identify people. The uniqueness of this group, as you might have realized, normally you go to a lot of different sessions and you have the birds of the feather flock together. So it's all think tank people, or it's development people, or it's experts on politics and regional politics, State Department types. Well, over here, we actually are a mix, and actually we're learning more from each other about real development issues and what works and what doesn't work. And we will be looking more and more to add on regionally. And one of the comments that was made was, is it just a session that ended? No, we did not come together because SDPI had a session. SDPI just turned out we already did it. We're not on a payroll of anyone. We're all committed to what we're doing. John is already doing a lot of work between Bangladesh and supporting the transition to democracy, a different democracy over there. Others have been working. So it is kind of a labor of love that we're involved with. So it's not one of those initiatives that gets funded by somebody, and when that money dries up, everybody goes home. A lot of us are self-funding ourselves on this one. And this is just the beginning, and we will continue. One last comment I will raise, and I'm sure it's on many people's minds, and I've heard it often, but these are all retired people. Right? See, Vishnu is already sitting there with a big smile going, huh? I was thinking that. What people don't realize is as long as you are a serving member of the US government, you don't have a right to free thought, to write, to advocate. You do what Mr. Trump tells you, and you can't deviate from that. Now they are writers, they're leading think tanks, they're very influential in their own rights. So I say, no, that is a huge boon that they are retired people. And since they are Pakistan and South Asia experts, and they've been sitting here, they've seen the countries, they're probably the biggest debunkers of any misperceptions that people have about Pakistan. And they're probably some of the best, most objective and neutral brokers that you will find. So with that, final comment. There's a lot of development funding that you keep hearing about from China. Well, learn from the US experience why USAID failed for the most part. China may have a lot to learn. And the Pakistan government, and in a session at ISSI yesterday, it was pretty clear that it's a shared responsibility between the Pakistan government and the US government on why the development funding did not reach the results that was hoped for. So perhaps utilize their talents and say, okay, tell us what China can do different. Maybe they ought to be sitting with China and talking to them. So with that, thank you so much. Thank you again for SDPI for hosting us. And thank you all for being here. And thank you for the delegates for being here.
Just before we conclude, I would like to request all the speakers to please come this side for the group photo, and we do have the souvenirs from STPI for you.